Chineye Mba-Uzoukwu, a member Joint Planning Committee at the NESJ, is joining me right now. Mr. Uzoukwu, welcome to the program and thanks for joining me. It's been a while. Long time no see.
Thank you for having me, Nancy. You look excellent.
Thank you very much. Now let's get started. The NESG would have its 27th summit sometime this month. Speak to me about that.
So Nancy, it's a 27th summit. It runs from October 25th to 27th. It's going to be a hybrid event. We're going to have physical in presence at the Transcorp Hilton in Abuja, but we're going to have a very robust online presence as well, as was done last year. The exigencies of COVID kind of like forced that situation, but it's been incredible the amount of uptake that we've gotten from last year, and we hope to take that momentum into this year to have a summit that really, brings all the stakeholders together in very deep discussions. We've got a theme, we've got 5 sub-themes, we've got 30 different sessions, and it's really deep, it's really comprehensive. So we look forward to having as many Nigerians as are possible to join in the conversation around what to do next. We feel very strongly that there is a need for us to figure out what needs to be done now, not tomorrow, but now. And for that to happen, it's not a group of people who should do that, but the entirety of Nigerians coming together across the breadth of all the themes that we've put together to discuss the real issues, analyze and understand what the core issues are and how to solve them and figure out how to solve them together. And then own the execution, because this is absolutely important. Oftentimes we sit back and we kind of like point fingers and look to somebody else to get the job done. And, it's quite easy to do that. With due respect to everyone who is in this difficult situation, including myself and most Nigerians, the requirements for today is for everyone to get involved and to try to solve the challenges of today so that we can secure the future. And that's how we've themed the summit, and we look forward to really, really, really engaging time.
The theme of this year's summit is securing the future, the urgency of now. What's the brain behind that theme? Perhaps, I know you said just a bit while you were speaking earlier, but what is the motive and what is the significance of this theme? Is it that perhaps all our challenges right now, both economic, socio-economic, political, that we are not taking a look at what the future it's like, because the future is even here, as it were, so we really need,
right.
we really need to begin to work. So what is the significance behind this theme?
So I don't think anyone in Nigeria today or any stakeholder in the Nigerian project itself is in doubt that we are in a state of crisis, multiple crises. And it's not something that started today. This is a combination of many decades of challenges that we faced across various sectors, and our ability or inability, as the case may be, to have managed those to bring us to a place where we can actually where we all want to be, which is a place of prosperity and progress and peace and security. But this is where we are, and we can spend a lot of time pointing out or looking for who to blame, or we can just focus on what we need to get done now. I think the reason why we've come to this point is that we understand Nigeria is facing in multiple dimensions almost existential threats, and right down to the fundamental of the national integrity, the integrity of the nation as a country, as a nation of its own. And when you get to that point, you really need to kind of like sit back, ask yourself very fundamental questions and figure out how to take it forward. We cannot have a situation where people are operating and living for the day and not living for the future. We as a generation and the generations that are coming behind us are generations that are going to be dependent on what we do today. The reason why it's so urgent now is that COVID in particular created a very difficult scenario for the country. A lot of the growth that we had experienced in the decade leading up to now was growth that gave a sense of a country that was finally on the move to recover and reclaim its mandate as Africa's giant, politically, economically, socially, and all that. But when we had COVID, certain things happened. I mean, not to diminish the fractures and the challenges that we have in other institutions within the system, but COVID amplified a lot of things and exposed a lot of issues within our system that must be fixed. It threw a lot of people into unemployment. It created a great level of insecurity across the nation in terms of physical security. It challenged the infrastructure that we have on ground, from education and children being able to go to school to food and things as fundamental as, do I have enough money today to get past this day? And of course, we had the health challenges as well in the healthcare sector. So more than anything else, I think COVID kind of like accelerated and sharpened the contradictions and the challenges within our environment and made it mandatory for us to address this as an emergency and address it holistically as an emergency, as opposed to taking it piece by piece. And you know, the Economic Summit, this is the 27th session. It's been on for something that's been going on for 25 years and plus. This is something that people would imagine, well, why are we still talking? And the issue is, if you stop talking, what then do you do? There is even a greater urgency for us now to bring as many people as are possible together to actually have the conversations that we need to have and start to address these issues in a holistic and integrated kind of way. And we've kind of like done that. The Economic Summit and the planning, the Central Organizing Committee, under, of course, the leadership of the chairman of Nigerian Economic Summit Group and the CEO, has been working and grappling with these issues of how do we actually theme the summit. Do people really want to engage with us this year? Is it something that we must have? And funny, we faced the same challenge last year. We even had to postpone the summit, if you recall, by a couple of weeks to accommodate the realities of our context. This year, we said yes, even more than last year. There is a very urgent need for us to convene and to have these discussions. And what we've done is that we've centered the theme on a broad concept that was developed under the UNDP that kind of like situates human security across 7 different dimensions. And each of those dimensions we are going to explore. I mean, it deals with human security from the perspective that people need to have freedom from fear, freedom from want, and they need to have a sense, and freedom from indignity. You know, the sense that you're not relevant in the system, the society in which you live. And these 3 dimensions are broken into further another 7 different dimensions that are very specific to sectors. So we're going to be looking at human security from the perspective of economic security, for example, the reality that people need to have a sense that they are economically productive within an environment and do not have to exit looking for something else. The fundamentals about food, being able to eat. I've spoken about health. The personal physical security, that you can actually have the freedom of movement within your community without being afraid that something is going to happen to you. Then the community itself and how the society itself actually coheres. And the 6th is the political security issue, which we think is, as we're going into general elections in 2023, you're going to see an acceleration, as is typical of Nigeria, of a lot of the temperature is going to raise in the environment. They may or they may not be replays of some of the ugly incidents that we've seen in the past. But the citizen itself, as a human being, needs to be secure and understand that the political system is working for them and is working to protect them and is working to advance them. And lastly, it's environmental security. Our concern is that if we look at the way that we're developing as a nation, are we developing at the expense of our environment? And by so doing, creating a completely unsustainable type of growth? Or is there a way that we can start to understand the benefits of having a circular economy, where things are actually, we make productive and efficient use of whatever resources that are available to us, and do so with an eye on the future and not just to take what we can now? So when you put this all together, it creates a really robust framework that allows everyone who is a stakeholder in a Nigerian project to participate, and allows us to have the conversations that we need to have. And from the conversations, we create the plans, and from the plans, we then enforce the accountability for execution with the various parts of the larger social, political, economic system. And this is not just government, it's all of us. We are government ourselves as citizens, and all the stakeholders that are involved in the Nigerian project are involved. So we need to get ourselves actually to the table to have the discussions, agree those plans, and hold ourselves accountable for the execution along these dimensions.
If we take a look at the NESG, just like you said, for the past 25 years have been talking, papers have been brought out, recommendations have been, year in, year out. Government officials have been spoken to year in, year out, different administrations. But it seems that, it seems to be like same old, same old. Perhaps this year, one of the good stories will be, okay, PIA has been signed. last year, oh, sign the PIB. 5 years ago, sign the PIB. 10 years ago, sign the PIB. I'm just taking that as an example. Now, how is the NESG going to bring in perhaps fresh ideas? Because Nigeria is a country of 206 million people. It revolves even beyond President Buhari, the 36 governors and FCT and the ministers and all of that. There are a lot of bright young minds. How is the NESG going to incorporate those set of fresh ideas? That's one. Then number two, for those that are watching now, that perhaps they find it interesting and they want to participate, how can they do that? What day is it? What time? I know it's 25th to 27th, but how can they participate?
Right. So let me address the issue of participation. I mean, everybody who is going to, like I said, we're going to have a hybrid conference. So there's going to be the in-person, and of course, and then there's going to be the online version. Almost every single session is going to be streamed. There are going to be opportunities for the same type of interaction that you would have in person, at least to the extent that technology allows. Online, and so all you need to do is to go and register at nesgroup.org, and you'd see. And let me repeat that: nesgroup.org. And when you go online, what you're going to find is that there's a broad set of kind of like tickets or admission, different types of programs that you can choose what you want to attend. Like I said, there are 5 sub-themes and 30 sessions. You don't have to attend all. It would be great to have you at all, but I doubt that anybody has that amount of time or that amount of availability. But we've done the best that we can from a technology perspective to ensure that while maintaining the protocols around the COVID-19, which still are in place, we want to open this up to as many people as is possible. Last year, we had about 6,000 participants, which is unprecedented in the history of NESG and the Nigerian Economic Summit. And this year, we're looking at 10,000 or more. And we think that's very realistic, given the passions and the heightened awareness of the challenges that we face today. So if you're watching now, please just go online and go to that website, www.nesgroup.org, and register for the summit. There's a lot of flexibility in terms of the packages that we've provided. We want to get everyone to the table. We're looking at getting students to the table. We want to get the unions to the table. We want to get the average Nigerian involved in this conversation. And we don't want it to be the kind of conversation like kind of like what you had earlier with your earlier guest, where some of the language there was, kind of like flies above the heads of people. NES 27 is more or less like a people's summit, and it's a people-centered approach that we're focused on. So we want to make it as accessible to people as is possible and engage the big voices, bring all the voices together, and not just the people who are panelists, but bring as many people to the table to discuss this as is possible. And I think that's really the direction that we want to focus on. Coming to the question of the economic summit, it's a very interesting thing. The Economic Summit manages itself and manages its communications with a lot of, I would say, reserve, in the sense that it's not intended to be, it's not fighting for space with other players in the system. NESG is the organized private sector group that creates that interface for the interaction with the government. And one way to look at it, Nancy, is, if we look at, you mentioned MSMEs in your earlier conversation. There are 40 million or 43 million MSMEs in Nigeria, according to SMIDAN and the MBS. Mm-hmm. If each one of those SMEs or MSMEs has a voice, how does each one speak to government? It's literally impossible. There'll be a cacophony. So you must have people who do the work of cohering the perspectives and allow people to kind of like have a single voice and a very strong and powerful voice. But beyond that voice is the hard work that happens behind the scenes of the constant engagement and working hand in hand with government. Sometimes we alienate government and think of government as some strange creature, but government is people. It's made up of people. It's made up of mothers, fathers, workers, people who are like you and I. They need the engagement. The relationship has to be strengthened only through constant communication and working together. And that's the work that NESG does behind the scenes, not just in preparation for the summit, but throughout the year. There's constant engagement. You mentioned one of the legislations. There are, to my last count, personal count, there are at least 33 other legislations that have been put or policies that have been
Okay.
put in place or are being worked on actively by NESG.
Okay.
And the public is not aware of this, but they see the output and they don't recognize the output to be linked directly to NESG.
Okay.
There was a tremendous.
Okay. Mr. Uzoukwu, can you hear me? Mr. Uzoukwu, can you hear me? I'm afraid we have to.
There's a massive amount of work around planning around the health sector.
Okay, Mr. Uzoukwu, if you can hear me, I'm afraid this is where we come to the end of the program. Thank you for being on the show today. We hope and we're looking forward to the summit, at least in the next few days. Thank you very much. Chineye Mba-Uzoukwu, who is a member, Joint Planning Committee at the NESG. That's the much we can take on today's edition of the program. Thank you all for being a part of the show. Please join me again tomorrow. Same station. Be the best you can be and be the change that you want to see. Bye now.